missile tests do nothing but undermine Iranian claims. They're not productive. They're not for satellites, and they're not for fireworks.
We're watching closely, and we are concerned.
These kinds of tests can only undermine Iran's claims of peaceful intentions.
3 administration spokesmen today with the same message, that they are concerned about the latest missile test from Iran. Iranians call it the Sajil-2 missile with a range of 1,200 miles, which would make it capable of hitting Israel or U.S. bases in the region. There you see the range in the picture there. The test providing a lot of anxiousness here in Washington and around the world as the diplomacy continues. Let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. Mort Kondracki, executive editor of Roll Call, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Charles.
Those remarks are pathetic. Undermine Iran's claims of peaceful intentions, as if anybody has any doubt. The president himself said 2 months ago at the UN that the Qum facility, the one that they discovered on satellite, a huge facility that's under construction, is not compatible with peaceful intent, which means it's military, which means we all know what's going on. How many ostentatious gestures does it take on the part of Iran for this administration to understand it's being treated contemptuously? You've got the missile launch. You've got the reports, which even the State Department has said is good journalism, of Iranian scientists working on a nuclear trigger. You've got even, on a lesser issue, the putting on trial of the 3 American hikers who obviously aren't spies. It's a form of hostage taking. At what point is the administration so humiliated that it actually speaks and does something active? Some conservatives have taken heart from the Oslo speech. There was nothing in the Oslo speech. The only change in the Oslo speech was that Obama called Iran Iran instead of his usual obsequious, the Islamic Republic of Iran. So the headline is Obama drops an adjective, Tehran trembles. This really is appalling.
Mort, you have the Israeli military intelligence, the intelligence official coming out saying that they are making leaps and bounds in technology, according to the Israelis. And then you have the pledge by the Iranians to build 10 more enrichment facilities.
Exactly. Look, I think that whether Obama is a successful foreign policy president will depend as much on whether he can stop the Iranian nuclear program as whether he succeeds in Afghanistan. If he is not successful in stopping that program by sometime next year, the Israelis are likely to attack with all kinds of dire consequences, and Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, can quote back to Obama his own speech in Oslo, in which he said that a head of state is entirely justified in order to protect his own country to unilaterally act against an adversary. So, if it's time for the president, he said Iran had till the end of the year, this year, in order to prove whether it was amenable to negotiations. It is clearly not amenable. We've got to go for very stiff sanctions, and the kind of sanctions that might work are a closing down of banking relationships by European countries and the United States, or cutting off their gasoline.
Reality, Steve?
Well, I think the real question is, I agree with Mort that this will likely be the most significant foreign policy issue and decision of Obama's first term. It'll have the most far-reaching consequences. The issue, as much as the issue is the nuclear program, the issue is the regime. And to the extent that we treat the nuclear program separately, I think it does a disservice to the seriousness of the problem that we face, and it allows people like Robert Gibbs and others to pretend to go along with this charade that we don't really know what they're doing. We do, in fact, know what they're doing. We've known what they're doing for a long time, the 2007 NIE on Iran's nukes notwithstanding. The bigger problem is whether the administration, the Obama administration internally, is deluding itself into thinking, continuing to delude itself into thinking that this regime can be dealt with. And it can't, and we've known that now for this entire year.
Charles, exactly 4 years ago today, you wrote a column in the Washington Post called "In Iran, Arming for Armageddon," talking about Mahmoud Ahmadinejad and his apocalyptic statements, the return of the 12th Imam, etc. You said, quote, "Everyone knows where Iran's nuclear weapons will be aimed. Everyone knows they will be put on Shahab rockets, which have been modified so that they can reach Israel. And everyone knows that if the button is ever pushed, it will be the end of Israel. Negotiations to deny this certifiable lunatic genocidal weapons have been going nowhere. Everyone knows they will go nowhere, and no one will do anything about it." This was December 16th, 2005.
And nothing has changed. The Bush administration applied pressure, but it was obviously insufficient, and they knew it in the end. And this administration hasn't even applied pressure. It started all over. And as Steve indicates, the one chance of stopping this Armageddon is change of regime. Sanctions are not going to work. It's either going to be an Israeli attack or a change in regime. And this historic opportunity has presented itself in the demonstrations in the streets. And there is graffiti on the walls of Tehran which says, "Obama, are you with us or with them?" meaning their oppressors. And this outreach, this delusion that the Obama administration has, that it can reach an agreement where Iran will actually undo its nuclear efforts, is nothing but a delusion. Our only chance is supporting vigorously the revolution in the streets, as Reagan, for example, supported the dissidents in Eastern Europe. But it's not on the table. Obama is still wedded to a losing strategy of negotiations which are going nowhere.
Well, what he surely has to do is side with the demonstrators in the streets, also apply severe economic sanctions with a lot of allies, and say basically to the Iranian people, your regime is causing this economic hardship that you're on. And it's not just the United States, it's not George Bush, it's the Russians, it's the Chinese, it's the Europeans. We're all saying to this, get rid of this regime, or we're going to keep it up. Because there's no way of stopping their nuclear program short of either an Israeli attack or a change of regime. I agree with that.
Quickly, do you think that this administration knows who they're dealing with in the Iranians and in President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad?
It's hard to imagine that anybody sentient doesn't. But it seems as if by the behavior of this administration, it either doesn't understand or it wants to not understand, because understanding implies action, and it is afraid of any kind of action, even sanctions or supporting the dissidents.
I disagree with that. I think they're going to go for sanctions quite soon. I mean, the deadline is up, the end of the year. He's got to go for big sanctions.
You agree?
Well, I think they're going to go for sanctions, but the question is, will they be effective? They've talked about crippling sanctions.
Or will they get them?
Will they get them? Will Russia and China be with us? I think that's highly, highly unlikely.